Hello. Tickled to death to have you here today. We've got a great presentation. I'm judging by the title, since we published the title of the presentation, and there are this many people in the room, that culture change is one of the issues that is affecting many of you out there as you're trying to make these shifts in the way you approach your technology. So glad to have all of you here. For those of you standing, I apologize we don't have a chair for you, but thanks for being here. I'm really excited about this presentation. We have two presenters here today that have really done some wonderful things within their organizations as they've guided them through change. I've had the pleasure here at AWS, I'm an executive advisor with our professional services organization, to work with several customers as they've tried to tackle this issue, trying to help them build security and strategy, and try to help them understand how they guide their organizations through the non-technical parts of a technological transformation. And as those of you know who are doing this, it's very difficult. I've always said, I've been working in IT for many years, and I've always said that we tend to focus on the technical aspects of change when we're approaching transformation. But the truly hard parts are the cultural aspects. How do we introduce this change and get people in the organization comfortable with it? How do we make sure that our employees feel valued throughout this transition? How do we ensure that we're giving them the proper skill sets in order to transition with us as we move this organization forward? And the one thing that I've always found as I worked with organizations, both my own organizations and then with the customers I've had the pleasure of working with at AWS, one of the things that I've always found as you talk with individual employees throughout an organization, we often think from a leadership standpoint that the question folks struggle with most is, how does this change affect the organization? And what you really find when you dig down into it at a deeper and more personal level, the first question that everyone in that organization must answer for themselves is, how does this change affect me as an individual? And so it's very difficult from a leadership perspective to connect at that level with all the employees within the organization. And so we're going to talk about some strategies today and how a couple of organizations have done that. Very proud to have Sherry Stevens from NAIC, National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and Jeff Olson from the College Board. I'm excited to hear what they have to say, and I think you will be as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry to share with us their story, and I'm going to pass her the clicker as well. And before Sherry gets started, I just have one thing to say. I'm a native West Virginian. I see a WVU shirt in the crowd, so go Mountaineers. All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning. I'm going to tell you a little bit about NAIC and where we're at on our change journey. And I'll tell you about some of the things we've done, some of the things we plan to do, and I'll give you a few recommendations at the end for your consideration. So the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, we're a support organization for the state insurance regulators. So we come alongside them and we help them carry out their missions, things like promoting competitive insurance markets and protecting consumers. We are very early on our cloud journey. We are in year 2 of a 4-year journey. We have 3 applications in the cloud, and most of our migrations are going to occur in 2019 and 2020. So this year is all about preparing for those migrations, technically as well as organizationally. We are also implementing DevOps as we go to the cloud, so lots of change. The reason we're doing this and why it's so important to us is it is actually a key underpinning in our strategic blueprint for the next 3 years. If you go to our website, we have a state-ahead plan, and it's very much critical to a lot of what our business needs and how we need to react to all of the forces converging on the insurance industry. Like many of you, we need to be much quicker to innovate and to do so inexpensively. We need quick access to new capabilities that we just don't have today, and we need to deliver value fast. So this is very real to us. It is definitely happening. Some of our challenges are very similar to probably what you face. We're a very siloed organization. Last year, our operations reported to one executive, our development reported to another. That's no longer the case, but we're still a siloed organization. We have 4 product areas with their own development teams, and they all do things a little bit differently, so there's really little standardization. As we started in this journey, one of the key things early on has been for us is to just recognize that the people side of this change, of this transformation, is just as critical as the technical side, just what Sterling said just a little while ago. As a project manager, we all know that that's true in any project, but how much more so it is true for a transformation. Now, there are several change management, organizational change management models in the market, and one of them is Cotter, another one is by Procy, it's called ADKAR, and these are very useful in helping to guide and plan your organizational change activities. I really like the ADKAR model because it's really quick to understand. It's ADKAR. A stands for awareness. What's the reason? Being aware of the reason for the business change. D is the desire to engage and participate, wanting to participate in the change. K is knowledge, actually knowing what to do, how to change. A is the ability to change. And then R is the reinforcement, the practicing of that change, developing that muscle. And so using a change management model enables you to really think through all the things you need to do as you transform your organization, and it is a lot more than just communications. One thing we did early on too was we engaged with AWS Professional Services to do some organizational skills and training work. We kicked it off with a half-day workshop with some our key managers and leaders across IT, as well as HR and some of the other areas. And we talked about our people. We talked about roles. We talked about our to-be operating model. AWS brought in some best practices in all of those areas for us to consider. And that was really important because it catalyzed the formation in January of this year of a platform engineering team. So we created, it's our first DevOps experiment, if you will. We have 18 folks, and we took folks from different development teams, from security architecture, from operations, and they're working together on 2 big bodies of work this year. One is developing our code pipeline, our CI/CD capabilities, and another one is just continuing to build out our runways on our platforms, automating governance and security. Again, getting ready for our migrations next year. AWS also helped us develop cloud learning paths. They administered surveys for us so we could understand where all of our different technical folks were with their understanding of cloud, how they like to learn, and we have cloud learning paths by roles. Some other things that we have done early on in our journey is we were actually funded for this in the middle of last year. And so in August at our all-hands meeting, our CTO invited everyone in the room on this journey. He encouraged us to lean into learning something new. And he said, we have everyone we need for this journey right here in this room. And that was really important for several reasons. First of all, it's a journey. It's not a destination, right? I'm not sure we'll ever be done. And also, there's a fear of wow, they're going to reduce headcount. My job's in jeopardy. And that's not what this is at all for NAIC. Some jobs will go away, some jobs will change, but it's not about reducing our headcount. Other things that we have done to raise awareness of our staff is we did some cloud panels this year. So with the CTO and some of the technical leads in this work, we talked about, why are we going to the cloud? What's in it for me? What are the good things that are going to come out of going to the cloud and doing DevOps, working in a different way? That was hugely popular. I was a little bit nervous about it because we have about 220 people, and often it's a very quiet group. There were tons of questions, and in fact, we went over. The second cloud panel we did, we actually had 3 folks from operations who had been on the platform engineering team working in a different way for about 3 or 4 months. And they talked about their experience. It's like, yeah, I used to be a network, or I used to be a security architect, and now this is what I'm doing, and this is how I'm working. And that was very powerful. One of the people had been kind of cynical about, yeah, I'm really not sure this is going to work, but yeah, I'll be on the engineering team. And he's actually an advocate now. He's an evangelist for us because he's seen the power and the good things that come out of working in a different way. Another person was, I think, very encouraging to folks because she said, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do each day, to be real truthful, and a lot of times I don't have the answers, but I work with others and we figure it out. And if I did it, you can do it too. That was really powerful because when people saw themselves in their peers, that carries a lot of weight. We also engaged and activated our managers in this change. You know, they say change happens one person at a time. So this can't just be driven by a few key people. It's got to be driven by a lot of people. And we introduced them to the ADKAR model. We provided them with a lot of frequently asked questions just so that they felt that they had some tools in their toolbox as they started to talk and socialize change with their staff. Part of it is knowing how to deal with someone who isn't engaged and who is, if you will, a naysayer. And that's not a bad thing. That's just resistance management, and that's just where they're at. It's about meeting them where they're at and working with them. And there are tools to help your managers do that. We've created learning opportunities for everyone. Last August, we put up a sandbox so anyone can go in and learn and experiment. We have learning paths on cloud, or online learning. We support certification. We don't necessarily push it, but we support it if you want to get AWS certified. We've also conducted a session for our business, just demystifying the cloud so they understand what it is and how they will be impacted, how we're changing and why we're changing. We did have a couple of openings. We had a chief architect opening and another architect opening, and we ended up hiring 2 gentlemen who actually head up the DevOps meetups in Kansas City. And that has been really useful because they've been there, they've done that, and that helps instill some confidence in the team. And so, and as I said, we are actually modeling a new way of working with our platform engineering team. Some things that we plan on doing as we go forward this year, you know, we're going to define what our culture changes are. And Gartner defines culture as the combination of values and behaviors. And rather than just say, okay, this is what we're going to focus on, this is how we need you to change, we're starting to socialize that a little bit and getting input. It needs to be a conversation because the culture is everybody made up, and everybody needs to have a say in that to really have buy-in. So we're just starting to do that. And once we define that, we'll figure out some metrics to evaluate our progress through this journey. We do need to develop some DevOps learning paths. Well, we intend to do some fun games, training events this year, get those on calendars, get some guest speakers, and just generate some excitement and enthusiasm around this. We are, as we are, working on developing our CI/CD capabilities. Even though our pipeline isn't ready to roll out, as we get new tools, we're getting people familiar with them. So we have a weekly technical newsletter, and we're transitioning that to GitLab, just so folks start to get used to going to that tool. Also, we use Slack. That's going to be our engineering communication framework. Of course, we're working with HR to update some of our job descriptions for cloud and DevOps. And in third quarter, we're going to start helping people with their ability and reinforcement by doing some practice migrations. So our initial teams that will be doing migrations next year will be doing some practice runs with them. Just some recommendations that I have for your consideration. I really encourage you to use a formal change management model. In the work that we have going on this year, we have 5 work streams. One of those is around organizational change and change management. These really help you think through not only the communication, but the training and everything else that your organization needs as it is transforming. And use surveys for feedback loops. You do it in short iterations technically. You need to do it with your organizational change work as well. After our first couple of cloud panels, we surveyed our folks to see what else did they need, what were the formats they liked to inform our next steps. Definitely engage your managers. They are a key part. They work with your staff. They're the ones who know where their people are at on that continuum of change and can help them transition. Don't forget about your business people. They're part of the effort too, so don't neglect them. Bring them along on the journey. And for us, because we're going to be living on-prem as well as in the cloud for several years, don't forget about your folks that are keeping the lights on, right? Those are your people who are doing the heroics every day, and we definitely need them as we transition to the cloud, and it's important to highlight them and remember them during the change. So in a summary, that's kind of a little bit about us and where we've been and where we're going, and I'm going to turn it over now to Sterling. I'm sorry, to Jeff. Sorry.
No, give it back to Sterling.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I have no more material. Sorry.
Thanks, Sharon. So, hey everybody, my name is Jeff Olson, and I'm from the College Board. I'll introduce the College Board, introduce myself, and then talk a little bit about our culture change. And I'm looking out today and seeing a lot of leaders of it here in the room. So a little bit about College Board. We are a 118-year-old nonprofit organization based primarily in New York City and in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. You may know us from, if you've ever heard the term board exam, that comes from the College Board. We helped to, we created something called the SAT. Thank you. Thank you. We also created the Advanced Placement Program. One of the things we're really excited about right now is growing and diversifying the technical skills in the United States via our Advanced Placement Computer Science program and our incredibly fast-growing Computer Science Principles program, which is a feeder into computer science, which we really think is going to, again, help grow and diversify software engineering in the United States. But just a little bit then about me. I came from data science and joined our IT organization to kind of help fuse together data science with general software engineering and data engineering, because we see that as the future. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to kind of reflect about our progress together. I don't want to say we've figured everything out or that we're at the end of our journey yet at all, but we're beginning to feel that we're pretty far along with some of the things we're working on, and so those are the things I wanted to share about. So you guys know Conway's Law. Any organization that designs a system will inevitably produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. There are various versions of this, but you end up reading this a lot when you read about DevOps or you read about microservices. And this is something we found, being an old organization that's been doing a lot of these things for many years, we have seen that there's sort of a corollary to Conway's Law, which is that our communication structures have evolved to match the legacy systems that we have to maintain. So in some sense, we look like these monolithic vertical applications that we may have made in the 90s or the early 2000s. And in other senses, our communication structures look like a sort of an MVC layered architecture. And so the real insight for us, though, was that the technology and the people mirror one another and are inseparable. So if you want to change the technology, you have to liberate the people. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. This is a photograph of us releasing SAT scores at 5 a.m. last year. That's a visual manifestation of Conway's Law. We had to have everybody in the room, like a NASA launch, right? Propulsion, check. Telemetry, check. Meteorology, check. Right? That's kind of what we have to do. And these are really, I have to say, I enjoy these. They're fun. I see the leader of these here in the audience today. But the thing about it is that this is a physical manifestation of Conway's Law because there are interdependencies between teams. And when there are interdependencies between teams, inevitably you end up impeding individual teams from innovating. What we're trying to get to is when you work on one of our teams, it feels like you're in a startup because there's nothing impeding you. Yes, you have controls, you have automation, you have CI/CD, you have security check, you have all of that, but you're able to release on your own in a DevOps manner and not having to consult with 7 teams that you may harm by innovating. This is a diagram we created to kind of represent the Conway's Law in which we live. The circles 1 through 10 represent teams. The teams are receiving user stories, let's call them, and epics from the business owners who want things from them, who need to deliver value. And on the bottom, we have all this intercommunication that needs to happen between teams to operate a monolith. And so, again, drawing from Conway's Law, what we wanted to begin to do, first of all, using Agile, was to take that sense of teams having to answer to so many distinct product owners and fix that by adopting Agile so that teams serve a single product backlog and a single product owner. And that helped a ton. But we still had all those interconnections in between individual assets. And I'm looking out here today. You guys chose to come to this session. Many of you work in a .gov or .org environment. And the nice thing about being in one of those environments, and I think something that we really learned, is that we may not compete with Silicon Valley to offer options and things like that, but we're able to attract a certain kind of technologist who values something about what they're contributing or doing every day. And I think a key lesson for us has been that technologists do not like working in backwaters. They don't want to work in a backwater, but therefore, if we create an opportunity for technologists to do their thing, right, with some structure, all this innovation emerges. So we kind of yoke this together by a set of principles that should be familiar to you. We call them the North Stars. Now, there's only one North Star, right? But we took a little creative license and decided to see it as more of a constellation. So first of all, Agile, we're talking about going to AWS, but for us, that's sort of inseparable from Agile. We don't want to go to AWS by simply moving our monolithic architecture and communication structure so that it's in a data center in Tysons Corner, Virginia, instead of another part of Virginia, right? That wasn't our goal. Our goal was instead to more refactor culturally and at the software level. And so Agile was kind of a foundation for us. The second thing is core. That's a little opaque, but what that means is we don't have to build everything. We can consume services from the API economy so that we reduce the amount of things we're developing and we reduce our attack surface. Microservices you guys are familiar with, but again, the notion of encapsulating individual assets so that they're not all dependent on one another in ways that are brittle. AWS, okay? So I'll just say it. We spent some years deliberating, like, which cloud provider should we go with? Do we have to go multi-cloud? That ended up for us being analysis paralysis. AWS is the furthest along, and we've committed to it. And we feel as though there are some benefits associated with that, which I'll talk about architecturally in a moment. Data as a service, that's the notion that we don't want our application to exist in the form of stored procedures in an Oracle database, right? That's not the proper place for application code to live. And so we wanted to kind of rethink and begin to view data as a service. Not everything needs a relational database. Continuous integration and DevOps we've spoken about, Sherry spoke about, but those, again, are critical along with Agile in really maximizing the benefit that you get from moving to AWS. Now, a piece of advice I would share to those of you who are, maybe thinking about a transformation like this for yourselves is you absolutely need leadership support. And our executive leadership team is not geeking out on concepts like CI/CD all the time. They have other day jobs, right? But they do care about value delivery. They do care about security. And so we wrote a white paper drawing on a lot of the concepts that are out there about microservices and DevOps and so on, essentially to state the case to our whole organization. And we asked the entire organization, not just the technology teams, to embrace Agile. And they did, and that made a huge difference. And I think if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have had the experience that we've had. We also got some external validation. For example, this HBR article about Agile from 2016, which helps to persuade leaders that Agile isn't just about software development, it's actually a new paradigm in management. Now I'm going to show you some artifacts from a lot of the cultural things that we've done to try to unlock the latent innovation that was in a lot of teams who were kind of previously constrained by Conway's Law. And so we did a hackathon in 2016, and the theme of it, there you see on the left, Pirates Cove, the theme of it was all about AWS services and getting to use AWS services. And we founded a cloud COE and a microservices COE, and I see the leaders of them here. And they sponsored these hackathons. So we did one in the end of 2016, I'm sorry, in the early 2017 and in early 2018, just a few weeks ago. And we had 20 teams, each building things over a 2.5-day span and presenting them to the senior leadership of the organization. And wow, what they were able to accomplish using a collection of managed services, microservices in just a couple days really amazed ourselves and also amazed our leadership team in ways that have a positive feedback loop for the organization. We also have very regular technical education within the organization. We have things we call lunch and learns. Here's one about our data movement service, which is called Big Train. We also have something called a drink and think, which is a little later in the day and has, yeah. So I'll just show you a few of these. They're microservices, core, the API economy, just learning for technologists who develop software all day to, again, continuously stay in touch with students and counselors. Catapult, which is our AWS radically cloud native web application architecture. Hyperloop, which is our event bus. The one realization that took us a little while to get to was that by selecting AWS, we had fundamentally selected JavaScript. Now, we don't assert that that is true for everyone, but we have a large organization focused on basically Java, Informatica, and Oracle. That's our legacy technology architecture, right? And so the decision that we made as a general pattern is that it's better to have our expertise focus on a single language up and down the stack. And that's allowed us to say to our Java engineers, hey guys, you're not Java professionals, you're software engineers. Hey data people, you're not Oracle certified technologists, you're data engineers. And that message is something that the technologists on our teams have really responded to through pursuing certifications and independent learning, and also a variety of learning opportunities we've created, like our microservices COE training. We offer internal JavaScript classes, which our Java engineers are finding really quick to learn, and our microservices bootcamp. These are internal classes, essentially, that meet at lunchtime, at breakfast, at the end of the day, where people learn new technology. And we said we wanted to limit this to 50 students, and we ended up having to open new sections, so we had 150 students. And then I'll say, just in terms of what we're striving for, like previously at another company, I participated along with others in moving servers from our data center to the AWS data center. That was almost 10 years ago, and it was great, and we saved money, and that was good. But That's not really our objective here. We are going for serverless as much as possible. So, success is potentially no servers. But then even Lambdas we're trying to minimize because we realize that we can compose mature applications with minimal attack surface through the use of managed services, essentially microservices developed by AWS itself. And I'll be happy to chat more about that later. So in terms of what we're seeing, we have an engagement survey among our staff that we administer each fall. And it's on a 100-point scale, and it hasn't moved a lot over the years. It's moved some, but we saw a huge jump of 9 percentage points of employee engagement increased over 1 year. And I really credit that to the latent innovation in teams. The amount of energy that was already there but wasn't able to be expressed before. Just a few photos. Here's from our hackathon. You can see the sticker on the laptop there, hack the monolith. That's our motto. Here's a team working on the hackathon. Another team in our office here near DC working on the hackathon. Yes, we had a pirate theme to our hackathon. This is a team working in my office during the hackathon. Teams, again, working on the hackathon. And among the things that we're doing is to change the way we release scores to educators. And today, actually this afternoon, we're going to turn off, I think, something like 4,000 physical CPUs because everything has moved into AWS where it doesn't have to be that big all the time. It can shrink down elastically when we're in a lower load time. So we're very excited about that and credit the people who did that. Thank you, Sterling.
All right. Thank you, Jeff, Sherry. Appreciate those stories. Before we turn it over, I've got a couple quick questions that I'd like to ask, if you don't mind. As you're presenting there, I'm hearing some things that I really want to dive a little deeper into. Sherry, first of all, when you're working to implement this type of change across your organization, do you feel that it's better to attack this type of change from the top down, or do you try to build that from the bottom up? What's your preferred way?
Yes. And what I mean by that is it really is a combination of both. I think it's very powerful in a transformation to have very strong leadership support and some guidance. But it's really the entire organization that makes up the culture, and they have to have some say in it. And it's a little bit ridiculous to think that one person or a very small group of people have all the answers anyway. So that's our approach.
Okay. And what are some things that you put in place at the different levels? I mean, how do you attack kind of top down versus the?
Sure. And I think a couple of things that have been successful for us, again, is this is very much a business-led transformation. And early on, it was a cross-functional group of our executives that were going around doing visits and that actually selected our service, selected AWS. That happened in the first part of 2017. And so our CTO has very strong sponsorship of this. And with regards to, as we're introducing changes and showing the path of where we're going to go, again, we're starting to slowly dribble out in one of our new tools, Slack, some ideas with regards to changes of where we need to evolve to, things we need to do differently, and socializing that and collecting input. So again, everyone can have a say in that and have an ownership as we go forward.
Wonderful, thank you. Jeff, you show a lot of examples of things that you're doing now to kind of help build that culture and get everyone on the same page and create some excitement. What are some of the things that you did, whether the things that you mentioned today or other things maybe that you didn't, when you were first starting out? What were the most impactful things or activities that you did to kind of start moving the needle internally?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing is we didn't do a big bang of everything at once. Okay. And so we defined something that we called beachhead teams. And a beachhead team was a team that was going to adopt all 7 North Stars at the same time, all the ones that I showed, so CI/CD and DevOps and Agile and AWS and microservices all at the same time. And for those folks, we invested in coaches. I mentioned Agile COE, microservices COE, Cloud COE, Software Quality Guild. And the
Could you define that COE for in
Yeah.
case there's some folks here that aren't?
Yeah, so a
familiar
center
with
of
the
excellence,
Okay.
an organization that develops tools to enable others and provides coaching to
Excellent.
others. So that was really, that's the first thing I would say, and that was an investment, right? So many cases those were like star people who were big contributors on the teams they were on, but we dedicated them to helping others, and that has made a huge difference. The other thing I would say is, with all those slides I showed with, learning and training and coaching and experimentation opportunities, it's about voices from the teams, and it's about amplifying those voices. That has the most credibility, I think, with everybody in the organization. It's the most likely to be in touch. And so that has made a big difference. Again, finding that latent energy.
Absolutely, great. Well, let me ask you a question for both of you. And Sherry, I'll let you respond first. Now looking back on the things that you've done and as you've progressed, if you could go back and do something differently, or perhaps tell us about something that didn't go well that you thought would, what would that be? And what would you change?
I feel we're so early on, I'm not sure I can look back that far. So I think I will have a good answer to that in a year.
Still in the process
yeah,
of evaluating?
I really do, yeah. So far, I believe in the things that we've done.
Great. Jeff?
So I could go on about this one, but one thing that we reflect on is we tried to contain a lot of things at the beginning, where we said, well, we're just going to start with these 2 teams, and then we'll do another 2, and another 2, and another 2. And we embedded agile coaches and other coaches with the teams. And one thing that we saw was that very quickly the appetite got way ahead of that plan. And so we ended up having to just say, okay, and have it go faster than we had imagined. There was one team that, on its own, without very much consultation or even informing, developed a replacement to their massive monolithic application in AWS over a few weeks, and then surprised us with it, which was, in my career, the greatest single act of insubordination. It's the best kind of insubordination. I think we needed some sort of framework for teams that were impatient and just wanted to go even if we weren't ready.
Great. All right, we'd like to turn it over now to the audience for some Q&A. So we've got a microphone here that...
Yep, so the microphones in the middle are working. So if you're along closest to the aisle, those microphones will work. And then if you're on the periphery, just raise your hand and I'll come bring you the microphone. We'll go here first.
Hi, I'm Maureen Madden, and I'm from NOAA, which is a large government organization. And you explained how you got the whole organization all engaged in training, in getting all the buy-in from top down. But that took a lot of time. That took a lot of resources in getting to do the all the different activities that you explained. How did you prioritize the training over the regular job? Because we have regular jobs, we fly weather satellites, we have to put out weather forecasts, and we try to preserve life and property. How do we say, what shouldn't we be doing, and how do we get the organization to say, yes, training is the way to go, and let's put more emphasis on training than doing our regular jobs?
I love that question. Sometimes we think that our jobs are really important because we release AP scores. And you were talking about protecting life and property, and I think you said you have satellites. I want satellites. But anyway, that was a real tension for us, because keeping the lights on and operating everything, while we're learning and developing and growing, is hard. And I don't think we have an easy answer. I would say the commitment of our CIO and our executive leadership team to allow us to invest additionally in coaching and development resources made a difference. The other thing is the dividends that came from innovation and migration were probably enough just in terms of time saved, to fund back the time lost?
At NAIC, we've done a couple of things. First is we have invested in some staff augmentation, so to free up some folks from doing the day-to-day so that they can lean into the new. A second thing is, as we are on this journey, we've had some native cloud projects going on. Sometimes that's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse, because, right, it adds to the chaos, if you will. But it's been really powerful because most of those product teams have had one or two projects, and so they have a nucleus of people within their organization that are learning as we go. That also does inform our platform engineering team with some requirements that otherwise they wouldn't have during the preparation too for our migrations. So just a couple of things. You know, and that's one of the frequently asked questions that we gave to our managers, because you know, how do they respond to staff who say, okay, here's some learning paths, that's fantastic. How much of my time at work do I get to spend doing this? And so we kind of came up with a number that was kind of equitable across all the areas, and it was only like, you know, maybe 4 hours a week, and saying, you know, you do need to invest some time on your own on this, and those people who are truly passionate, you know, do that anyway.
Okay, we have a question in the back.
Issa Lanuza from U.S. Coast Guard, and we're looking to move to the cloud, right? Question about which option you all went with and how you derive there. And by option, I mean, did you lift and shift? Did you optimize, then move over, or did you do a little bit of both? The second part of my question is, you mentioned Agile, but did you also expect your teams to do some waterfall planning ahead?
I guess I'll take that one. In terms of options that we suggested, or options we chose, we didn't choose lift and shift. We had built some AWS assets, you know, over the last decade that looked like a lift and shift, and therefore they're already there. But for none of the assets that we chose to adopt early via our beachhead teams did we lift and shift. We wanted to really set an initial pattern of a more cloud native approach. It would be most of these would be even more cloud native if we were starting them today, because of the continuous development of AWS, innovating at that pace. But in terms of kind of the waterfall to agile transition, again, there we didn't big bang. So even today, we have many or most of our teams operating as agile, and some teams not yet quite operating as agile. And actually, that's been fine. One of the big things that made a difference in bridging from waterfall to Scrum has been that we do a quarterly planning exercise that you can participate in and derive benefit from. It's a ceremony. It's an agile ceremony of our, you know, that we've adapted. But even if you're a waterfall, a traditional team, you can derive benefit from it by participating in that quarterly planning.
Our high-level migration strategy is a little bit different. So we want to minimize our bubble of our on-prem data center cost and being in the cloud, right? So as we know, our costs during that time period are gonna increase. And so we estimate about 90% of our apps that are gonna go to the cloud will be rehosted or replatformed. About 10% of our apps, though, will be refactored, and you know, we already have done one of those and have several more in process, and we'll continue on that path to continue to take advantage of industry and business opportunities. And we're a mixture as well. Our teams currently, a lot of them do Scrum or Kanban, and then there's a little bit of mixture as appropriate for waterfall.
Okay, we have a question here.
Hi, I'm Dan Davis. I'm a contract architect at the National Library of Medicine. So my question is about why choosing AWS inevitably led to choosing JavaScript. I have gotten like our team of 50 to move from Cold Fusion to Python over the past 6 years. And now I'm looking at microservices and APIs and encountering that same thing. My intuition is that it's because your on-prem applications need to talk to your off-prem applications, and you either have to introduce an additional tier or embrace it. But I want to hear you elaborate on that.
Yeah.
No more restarting the fusion reactor? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we have a lot of Python passion inside of our organization, especially in data science, but in other places. I think that the reason that we arrived at that is because we realized that the way we were going to be architecting applications in the future, a lot of the AWS managed services were going to be doing heavy lifting for us, and we were going to be calling them directly from browsers of one sort or another. And therefore, we wouldn't imagine running Python in the browser, right? So as more of the work goes into clients of one sort or another, that was going to be JavaScript, right? And then the other thing is, Lambdas are great and microservices are great, but we actually want as few as possible, even of those, because we love the managed services, right? And so JavaScript became essential, and then it became, well, what do you want to do server side? Do you want to go from Java to Python and JavaScript, or from Java to just JavaScript? And so it was just more elegant. It wasn't a religious decision.
More questions?
We got time for 2 more.
Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Dhaval Srimankar from Capgemini. A question in terms of going through the cultural change. You go through your dips, AKA failures. How did you work with your accounting or finance teams to allow budget for those failures?
Sherry, you want to try it first?
How did we, I'm not sure well, we haven't actually budgeted for failures. And I'll be real truthful, we have a very, like most folks, most companies, we have a very traditional finance organization. I just submitted a project proposal last week for a project for our migrations next year. I don't know all the answers of actually what that's going to look like and what it's actually going to cost, right? But our fiscal process, like most of yours, are a little bit off from the actual time frame of doing them. And so there's lots of estimates, and our finance people hate that, right? Absolutely hate it. They're totally opposed to giving us a bucket of money for a program to manage, which would be perfect for a cloud program, because you have so many unknowns, and if you want to be agile and you want to be quick, that is what you need to have in place. We are certainly not there yet.
Got one more?
Okay, we had one in the back here.
For both of the speakers, could you describe what skills, in addition to the senior leadership, were brought together to determine the first goal, the to be when you began? And second, how flexible or agile has your journey been to adjusting that goal as you've been working to the steps that you've described here?
So I would say, I'll just, like, thinking back to the North Stars, I remember a list of, we got to 7. I remember a list of North Stars that had like 18. We had, conversations with people at a lot of levels of the organization with a lot of different experience, and we had really fervent debate. We read some books. We read, Martin Fowler together. We went out to dinner and argued. But that was essential, because at the end of all the arguing, the concept of cabinet rules, like, you debate really fervently, but once you decide, you all agree. That the argument, I think, was critical in terms of getting to consensus.
And we are I think, articulating our path forward, and we're very much figuring it out. And it really feels somewhat organic to me with regards to, there's not a lot of thou shalt do this or you have to do this. I think we're offering up options, and that we are hoping that really the people will come and follow. And you know what? We recognize, quite truthfully, that the first thing we do, or maybe some tools we select early on, don't end up being the right choice, and that will have to change, and that we're open to that.
All right. That's all we have time for today in the session. Thank you all so much. Thank the speakers. And have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.